This is going to be a very quick video just to show you the basic points that you need to remember when you're making your pizza using some ready-made bread. Now I've got a panini here. You could use a bagel, you could use ciabatta, you could just use an ordinary bread roll, you could use some pita bread. So we would have gone through with you in the lesson all the different breads that you can use. Now if you're using something like pita bread, you can just place that straight onto your tray. If you've got something like a ciabatta or a panini or a bagel, you'll need to cut that in half first. So you will literally just need to find about the halfway point on your piece of bread, and you can do this using a table knife to go through your bread. It's not a hard item to cut, and that gives us our two pieces for our pizza toast. Now those then can go onto your tray. So as I said, if you're using pita bread, or if you're using, as I said, just sorry, I can't get my words out here now. If you're using pita bread, or if you're using just some ordinary slices of bread, that can go straight onto your tray. But as I said, if you've got a ciabatta or panini or bagel, you will need to cut those first. Now when you do this in the lesson, you can cook whatever you can fit onto your tray. I could fit more on here, but for the purpose of the video, I only actually want to do the two pieces. But I could obviously have got another couple of pieces on there had I wanted to. So you will be able to cook, as I said, whatever you can get onto the tray, and it's best if we assemble it on the tray so we're not trying to lift them up once all the toppings are on there. So the next thing we're going to do is put our tomato puree on there. Now some of you may have decided that you want to use barbecue sauce, some of you may actually want to use some pesto, but I would imagine that the majority of you are going to use tomato puree. And then using a tablespoon or a knife, whichever you find, a teaspoon, sorry, or a knife, whichever you find easier, we're just going to spread that puree. Now I wouldn't get it too close to the edges. If you get it too close to the edges and then there isn't anything covering it, it does tend to burn in the oven, which obviously we don't want. You can, like I'm having to do there, if you find that what you've put on isn't enough, you can just add some more. That's certainly easier than adding too much right at the start and then trying to take some off if you decide you don't want quite as much as that on there. So I've put as much puree on there as I actually want for these. And the next thing then is to put the other toppings on. Now if you're using wafer thin ham, I would suggest that you put that under the cheese, because again in the oven it does tend to curl up and go black, which again doesn't look very appetizing. Or for other toppings, just sprinkle your cheese on and then we can put your other toppings obviously on top. So put your cheese onto your pieces of bread that you are using. Okay, I said it's only really the wafer thin ham that I would suggest going underneath here. And then you can put on any other toppings that you're using. So I've just got some frozen sweet corn here. Just easier to use frozen sweet corn rather than opening up a whole can for the amount that I actually want to put onto these. And then we're just going to pop those into the oven. Just before I pop these into the oven, just to remind you, because a lot of people say, well, how do I know when they're cooked, miss? What we're actually doing here is making up a product that makes use of any bread that we may have left over at home. So if I were to eat this now exactly as it were, okay, it would not do me any harm at all. So I could eat it just basically like a baguette and pop them together, or eat them separate like that. So when you actually put them into the oven, the key thing is really just to keep them in the oven until you are happy with how brown they have gone, with how much the cheese is melted, because ultimately this is a product that you are going to be eating. So these have been in the oven now for 10 minutes. I could have left them in there longer if I'd wanted the cheese to actually crisp up a bit more, but I'm happy with how those are. So if you leave those to cool down on your trays for a couple of minutes, and then just use one of your fish slices and pop them into your containers ready for you to take them home. And obviously you will need to wash the tray up, but again we can leave that until it's cooled down. Please remember, it's just come out of the oven and it's going to be very, very hot.